I'm Denver Jackson, and I am the creator and filmmaker for a web series called Estelina the First Monolith, which is a little over an hour long, and then two feature films, Estelina the Crown of Babylon and The World's Divide, that currently screened at Spark. So I'm here to chat about how I came to this process. Production is just me, really. And then pre-production is I did the storyboards, design work, story reel, anything prepping for production. And yeah, I'm just going to chat about how I got to the stage in the process, and hopefully it's helpful. So like any other animator, I started out doing short films. My long-term goal was always to really do feature films, but I had to kind of learn the process of animation. And so I started out about 10 years ago. I looked and researched just the animation pipeline I made a list of what it takes. It's writing, storyboarding, story reel, design work, character animation, background paintings, compositing, editing, and so forth. I decided to look at that and make a short film from that structure and treat every single one of those processes as a project in itself, just to study the pipeline. That essentially became my animation school, film school. Like, I never went to school for any of the stuff that I do, and it was mainly being self-taught and online resources and just behind-the-scenes DVD commentary, and any type of behind-the-scenes thing I can look up would always be an interest of me. I learned through art books as well. The art of books are great, really inspiring stuff to just page through. But yeah, essentially, my first short film was me studying the pipeline behind animation. It's interesting looking at this. You can really tell how all of this is based on the version of Photoshop I'm using. But it's basically the same workflow as pretty much what I'm doing now. So it's kind of interesting to see how far I've come. It's just I've improved on the same workflow over time. Now, my second film, titled The Wishing Jar, it was another second short film. I decided to go in for grant funds. And at that point, I felt confident enough that I could make another short and just like refine the pipeline process that I learned prior. I also decided to spend more time on this film and really look into different methods. With every project, I'm always looking to learn something new and carry that forward to the next project. So for this one, it was really like projection mapping was a huge thing that I really wanted to try out. And I got a chance to play around with it and really utilize it for this specific short film. The total production time on this one was about a year, and it was maybe 14 minutes long total. But everything was still animated. Yeah, with a little bit of a production called the animation. Yeah, after that, did one more short before jumping right into a web series. Now, the web series, I had a feature-length script about 120 pages long that I wrote, and it was then titled The World Beyond. And I applied for a grant fund from StoryHive, which is a web series fund. And the their one requirement was it couldn't be over an hour long. So I had to go back, look at the 120-page script and see what exactly I could cut out to fit that 60-page time length. And I couldn't cut out anything. The 120-page script was fairly tight. There was a lot of story that it had to go through, and I decided that I would rather do a spin-off tale from that one script and fit it into that 60-minute time frame. And that became the first Monolith. It was all hand-drawn animation, basically using the same pipeline as the shorts that came before. However, I was doing very limited animation. So really taking a page from anime and looking at frozen frames and just mouth flaps and any shortcuts possible that I could take. I was trying to figure out how I could tell a long-form story in such a short amount of time. Now, the total production timeline was 8 months. So it was really, really tight. But, this is my first long-form story. And so by the time I was done, I was actually a little more disappointed than I was on my previous films, just because with every film I like to upgrade, and because I was going so fast on production and doing so limited animation, it felt like a step backwards in terms of quality to me. So it was really tough getting through this process. But I learned a ton, and the experience gained from this really informed how I moved forward on a feature-length story. Also, action sequences take a lot longer to complete. But I've just been doing action since, so I don't know why. Ever since this production on this web series, I started to be working 15, 18-hour days, 7 days a week for the duration of production. And that hasn't changed at all up to this point. So it's interesting looking back. I kind of had to train myself to keep going through production. It's funny, some artists I hear talk about waiting for inspiration to strike, and that's when they'll start working. But you find out real fast that you just got to keep going and not wait for that inspiration to strike. And when that inspiration does strike, it's more like icing on a cake. It happens, and it's just nice when it does happen, but it doesn't always happen. And you just got to keep moving forward with making things. But yeah. Halfway through making the web series, we applied for another fund from Telefilm. It's a Features First fund, which is called the Talent to Watch program, and it's for first-time filmmakers. I figured, okay, I can apply for this grant, and if I get that funding, that will help me jump onto the next thing right after the web series. So the web series ended up being a little over an hour long, but here's the trailer for it. Hope you enjoy it.
My heartbeat.
Done.
Well, I have to say,
Good.
The relics of the old world do not always mean destruction. There is a balance. Those relics can also provide life. I've got what I came for. But without the knowledge of how to use their power, with great certainty, it will lead to destruction.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Lita. I cannot help you.
no more games!
I saw her, the power destroying everything in her path.
We destroy the monolith. We stop Ocean. If we do this, we do this together.
Here we go. Because
Now, closer to the end of the web series, when it came down time to get close to mixing the film, we got the news that I had received the grant fund for my first feature from the Talent to Watch program. That was really not something I was thinking about at the time because I was so focused on finishing the web series. So my main focus was to finish that, and the grant funds getting that was not on my mind at all. But after I was done the web series, I looked at, okay, now I have this fund to make my first feature film. And at that point, I was so burnt out from animating a whole web series that I actually tried to give the funding back. Now, as I was trying to negotiate to give the funds back, they were telling me, well, we already had our jury come in and they picked your project, so you need to kind of make it. And I had applied with that same 120-page script because I wanted to still tell that story. And so as I was trying to give the funds back, I decided to look into 3D animation and character models and character rigging and all that stuff. I had never done that before. 3D actually always scared me for some reason, and which prevented me from diving in. And also, I just love traditional animation so much that I really wanted to stick with it. But telling a long-form story, possibly like using 3D as a tool, it could help, for my health, prevent more injuries like I did with my hand. So on the web series, I was drawing so much that my hand actually just was in pain for 2 years after the project was done, and trying to minimize the risk on my own, body, that using 3D was possibly a method. And so I ended up accepting the grant fund on a condition that I can tell a different story that wouldn't be a 2-hour movie, and it could possibly just be an hour long. So they accepted the terms, and what ended up happening was I just wanted to do a continuation of the same characters from the web series. So those characters that you saw prior in the web series, the first feature continues on with their story, but it's not necessarily a story that continues right from the web series. It's a self-contained story that people can just sit down and watch on their own. I wanted it to be sort of like an action-adventure film as well, and just very fun in terms of feeling and tone. And really just me making the film, I wanted it to feel fun. So then I jumped in, and I was using an online 3D program to auto-rig the characters called Mixamo. It's an Adobe online program. And then I was also using Cinema 4D because I had bought it for motion graphic work prior, just freelance work. So I already had this 3D program, and that's what I decided to use. So while researching a lot of the 3D animation cel-shaded look, at the time, I felt that there was a kind of an uncanny valley feeling, and trying to think of a way that would make it visually appealing to myself, I thought of a method of using drawovers. So I would draw over the animation. I would do all hand-drawn expressions, hand-drawn hair, hand-drawn hands. And that way I thought, to me at least, it would be more visually appealing. And also facial, just jumping into 3D animation right away, facial animation looked far too if you could get it at the time. So once I got that pipeline down, full character animation, I started pre-production on the film, which began in like April 2019. And that was all writing, trying to reformulate the original story to tell a story that doesn't have to be 2 hours long, and then going right into the animatics and storyboarding. Storyboarding began around June, and then animatics were completed around July. And then production started at the end of July. Now, during that process of production, making the movie, my back actually gave out. I was working, 14 to 18-hour days, 7 days a week, straight for like a year, and then suddenly my back gave out and I couldn't move out of bed for like a month. That was really a wake-up call that I need to really push into my schedule, like a regimented exercise routine. And I've been doing that ever since. It's a scary thought when that happens. Now, honestly, while figuring out the pipeline process of a feature-length production, there's always going to be new things that you learn through while in production. And many times, especially on this production, while you're learning new things, you can't really implement them because you've gone so far in production. So I would be making notes and just jotting down thoughts of how to improve the pipeline for the next project. But definitely 3D was a direction that I felt like I could go in to tell these long-form stories. My friend, who is also a director, and he was working on his own production at that time, he had animators working for him, but we were sharing just things about our films, like showing clips every day and really inspiring each other. And he was really curious about how I was getting this made. And so by the end of production, he came over and he wanted to just see my process. And so I started showing him the 3D rigs that I was using, the auto rig stuff. And he looked at it and said those were the worst rigs he'd ever seen. Now, I don't know what good rigs are just because I'm starting out, and I figured this is just what people use. And so he said, when you start your next production, really just let me know, because he wanted to do the 3D rigging for me and show me what good rigs can be. Yeah, production completed around February of 2021. And here's the trailer for my first feature film.
Mitsu, how much further?
You're in an uncharted area of that site. Hang a left!
It's hard! You back in the chaser business?
You back in the making fun of me business?
Always. This crown of Babylon. A relic of the ancients. A source of power that transcends our reality.
You will get paid when I have the crown in my possession. If Sparrowwood uses the crown, he could kill millions.
If you believe in that legend.
Come work for us. Chase relics for the Royal Guard.
I'm a researcher, not a soldier.
She was onto something at that dig site before she was captured.
Who's the chaser you hired?
What?
The chaser!
Her name's Kaz.
Fed you, raised you.
A trespassing, thieving criminal. Who taught me everything I know. But if Sparrowwood finds the crown before we do,
He'll have no reason to keep Kaz alive.
Here goes nothing.
I know what you thought of me. Selling relics, pirates, and mercenaries.
Kaz's notes are incomplete.
Akito's lost text?
Young Will, my brightest pupil. I must say, I am impressed.
Sparrowwood has the crown.
What are you gonna do?
It seems impossible to get rid of you.
Scout!
There's no time. It's over.
This has to be done.
And usually, I like to take a little breather by the end of production, but I immediately just jumped onto freelance work. And so I just worked for about 4 months of freelance work. I got some pretty good paying jobs, and I was able to save up a bunch of money. And it was enough to probably survive for another 2 years. And while I was doing the freelance work, I was also working on rewriting that 120-page script. And I ended up changing the title because I did a Google search for The World Beyond, and there had been a show that had come out, a Walking Dead spinoff called The World Beyond. So I looked for a new title, and I pretty much came up with The World's Divide. So that friend I mentioned earlier who was directing his own film, and while I was doing mine on Babylon, on this project, he came on board as the technical director to help create 3D rigs. And we also hired a 3D modeler. So the technical director's name is Caleb Haystad, and the 3D modeler is Scott Ormsby. Both were incredible to work with and upgraded the look of the film by so much. Once I was done, I jumped right into storyboarding. So pre-production really began around June 2021 for this new feature film. And I would spend 3 months on the boards, completed the boards in September, and then go right into the animatic phase. And I spent so much time behind a computer during production staring at screens that I really have incorporated it into my workflow to just do storyboards by hand. So I enjoyed the process of just sitting behind my desk and drawing on paper and not having to stare at a screen constantly, because that's for production. But finding joy in each stage is key. While I was doing the story reel, I was also overlapping that with production. So I started background paintings on the project, Now, because I've been using 3D, I figured for this production pipeline, I could build out 3D models of each environment. And this way, I could export those environments and do paint overs over top. This would help me just really for like structural or man-made things like architectural stuff. I felt like it was a shortcut to be able to paint those things fast or faster. But anything like nature, I would utilize, it would just be hand painted. So prior to the production on this feature, I've started to build a schedule for myself. So I would pretty much start my workday around 11 a.m. strictly, and then go to around midnight or 3 a.m. depending on the day. The strict work schedule really worked well for me. It was pretty much during the mornings, I would start on character animation. And then during the afternoons, I would jump onto background paintings. And then in the evenings, it would be compositing. I would pretty much have a regimented, strict schedule for myself, specifically when it comes to getting the amount of shots done per day. Like really trying to find a good schedule of the amount of work being done daily. If I don't meet that deadline of getting these many shots done, I would just stay up all night and finish the working on those shots. I think one of the questions that I get asked a lot is, how do I avoid burnout? Or how do I keep going on these projects? And really, it's focus on what's in front of you. If you look at an entire film and you try to focus on making an entire film, it can feel daunting because you're thinking about storyboards, character animation, background paintings, editing, compositing, and it can feel like too much. But if you break it down into various stages and just focus on those stages, even stages within stages. So for example, storyboarding. Storyboarding is just a stage that you break it down to and focus on, and then you break that down even further and focus on a scene. So say you'll storyboard a scene a day or a sequence a day, and you just kind of break those things down into manageable chunks. And you keep working at it, and, you know, by the end of 2 years, you have an entire feature that's cut together and ready to go. But yeah, try not to think of the whole, try to think of pieces at a time. So if you think about where I started from my first short film and learning each stage of the process and production pipeline, my workflow hasn't really changed since then. I'm doing the exact same steps as I did on my first short film. It's just refining the process and getting faster at it and finding areas where, for example, a lot of the stages is meant for communication for the next stage in the process for other artists. So, for example, layout, it's to communicate to the character animators and background painters exactly where things go. And because I'm doing everything on my own, I already know from the boards what I'm going to change and what I'm going to do for character animation and background paintings. So I tend to cut the layout stage out of my process to speed things up and speed things along. But yeah, it's essentially the same process. I'm just getting a little better at it each time I try to do this. One of the benefits of not having gone to film school or animation school is that nobody told me that I couldn't do this. Nobody said that it was impossible to make an entire feature film on your own. And so I always just believed that I could.
I thought the movies.
Huh?
What's that? Okay. We'll go with
But every single time, regardless of whether it's a short film or web series or a feature, I'm always learning something new and coming up with new ideas for the next production. And so that's partly why I think I keep doing this, because I get excited to jump onto the next project, to implement new ideas and a faster or tighter pipeline and a more efficient pipeline. Even now, after finishing this current feature film, I have new ideas of how to improve on the production pipeline and how to have certain things look better. And obviously, the more you do something, for example, animating, you get better at it. And so, I'm always learning so much with every project. But because I also jumped right onto this feature film pretty much right after finishing Babylon, I didn't apply for any funds, any grant funding. So this film had no budget. And when it was getting closer to the end, I needed money for voice actors, music, sound mixing. And so instead of applying for grants, which takes a long time to hear back, I decided to focus on a Kickstarter campaign. And I put it up. I put a pitch video up explaining the production process, or the production itself, and what I'm making. And it ended up being funded within 4 or so days.
Cool.
So we managed to be able to get the funds, and also the amount of interest that it sparked online was incredible. We got some sound designers from the Spider-Verse films as well. Alec Rube is the sound supervisor on this particular project, and he pretty much gave us the opportunity to go down and mix the film at Universal Studios, which felt a little surreal, too big for my tiny $100,000 movie. But it was incredible. It was such a great experience. So all the music you've been hearing throughout this entire thing has been done by Mark Younger and David Parfit. They're the two music composers that I've been using since my very first short. Mark Younger started out on my first short, and then David Parfit came on my second short. and they've been working together, and we've just been good friends for so very long working on these projects. And they're really the people that I go to that first see the story in animatic form and hear about what I'm working on next. And I trust this. I have a huge trust with them in terms of giving me story notes. And so they're an essential part of the crew from the very beginning of production. And I hope you all enjoy this little teaser trailer for The World's Divide.
Thank you, Kai.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed the new teaser for my current feature. It's interesting looking back at everything I've done, the 15 plus years of animation, and where I started and how I started. It's just the slight improvements here and there that I've been making along the way. It's really just the time and dedication spent in making a film. And I think filmmaking in general, you got to enjoy the process. You got to enjoy every stage of the production, from sittings, having coffee in the mornings, and the solitude behind a desk, drawing, storyboarding, to like animation. Every shot is different. You're going to find something new, something interesting to do in every single scene. But it's really just having fun doing it. That's the most important part. And if you're going to take anything away from this, you just got to sit down and do the work, really. Yeah, that's it from me. Hope you all enjoyed this talk, my long rambling on about things. Hope this was informative, and thank you all for listening.